Before the Fellowship was the greatest story you've never heard. I'm Cameron.
I'm Dan.
I'm Greg.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last time we began chapter 22. Morgoth released Húrin, but he was rejected in his home of Hithlum and began to wander the land. Thorondor spotted him from afar and reported his findings to Turgon, who decided to welcome Húrin into Gondolin. By the time they went to seek him out, he was already gone, but not before revealing to Morgoth the general region of Gondolin. Húrin heard the voice of Morwen lamenting and sought her in Brethil. At Cabed Naurimeth, he encountered Morwen. With Húrin's hand clasped in hers, she passed away. Anger filled Húrin, and he decided to deal vengeance on anyone who had dealings with his kin. Today we continue chapter 22 of Quenta Silmarillion, beginning on page 230 of the second edition. Now Húrin crossed over Teglin and passed southwards down the ancient road that led to Nargothrond, and he saw far off to the eastward the lonely height of Amon-Rût. He knew what had befallen there. At length he came to the banks of Narog and ventured the passage of the wild river upon the fallen stones of the bridge, as Mablung of Doriath had ventured it before him. And he stood before the broken doors of Felagund, leaning upon his staff. Here it must be told that after the departure of Glaurung, Mim the petty dwarf had found his way to Nargothrond and crept within the ruined halls, and he took possession of them and sat there fingering the gold and the gems, letting them run ever through his hands, for none came nigh to despoil him, from dread of the spirit of Glaurung and his very memory. But now one had come, and stood upon the threshold, and Mim came forth, and demanded to know his purpose. But Húrin said, "Who are you, that would hinder me from entering the house of Finrod Felagund?" Then the dwarf answered, "I am Mim, and before the proud ones came over the sea, dwarves delved the halls of Nala Kizdun. I have but returned to take what is mine, for I am the last of my people." "Then you shall enjoy your inheritance no longer," said Húrin, "for I am Húrin, son of Galdor, returned out of Angband, and my son was Túrin Turambar, whom you have not forgotten. And he it was that slew Glaurung the dragon, who wasted these halls where now you sit. And not unknown is it to me by whom the dragon helm of Dolormen was betrayed." Then Mim in great fear besought Húrin to take what he would, but to spare his life. But Húrin gave no heed to his prayer, and slew him there before the doors of Nargothrond. Then he entered in, and stayed a while in that dreadful place, where the treasures of Valinor lay strewn upon the floors in darkness and decay. But it is told that when Húrin came forth from the wreck of Nargothrond and stood again beneath the sky, he bore with him out of all that great hoard, but one thing only. Now Húrin journeyed eastward, and he came to the Meadows of Twilight above the falls of Sirion. And there he was taken by the elves that guarded the western marches of Doriath, and brought before King Thingol in the Thousand Caves. Then Thingol was filled with wonder and grief when he looked on him, and knew that grim and aged man for Húrin Thalion, the captive of Morgoth, but he greeted him fairly and showed him honor. Húrin made no answer to the king, but drew forth from beneath his cloak that one thing which he had taken with him out of Nargothrond, and that was no lesser treasure than the Nauglamír, the necklace of the dwarves, that was made for Finrod Felagund long years before by the craftsmen of Nagrod and Belagost, most famed of all their works in the Eldar days, and prized by Finrod while he lived above all the treasures of Nargothrond. And Húrin cast it at the feet of Thingol with wild and bitter words. receive thou thy fee for thy fair keeping of my children and my wife. For this is a Nauglamír, whose name is known to many among elves and men. And I bring it to thee out of the darkness of Nargothrond, where Finrod thy kinsman left it behind him, when he set forth with Beren son of Barahir to fulfill the errand of Thingol of Doriath. Then Thingol looked upon the great treasure and knew it for the Nauglamír. And well did he understand Húrin's intent. But being filled with pity, he restrained his wrath and endured Húrin's scorn. And at the last, Melian spoke and said, Húrin Thalion, Morgoth hath bewitched thee. For he that seeth through Morgoth's eyes, willing or unwilling, seeth all things crooked. Long was Túrin thy son fostered in the halls of Menegroth, and shown love and honor as the son of the king. And it was not by the king's will, nor by mine, that he came never back to Doriath. And afterwards thy wife and thy daughter were harbored here with honor and goodwill. And we sought by all means that we might dissuade Morwen from the road to Nargothrond. With the voice of Morgoth, thou dost now upbraid thy friends. And hearing the words of Melian, Húrin stood moveless, and he gazed long into the eyes of the queen. And there in Menegroth, defended still by the Girdle of Melian from the darkness of the enemy, he read the truth of all that was done, and tasted at last the fullness of woe that was measured for him by Morgoth Bauglir. And he spoke no more of what was past, but stooping, lifted up the Nauglamír from where it lay before Thingol's chair, and gave it to him, saying, Receive now, Lord, the necklace of the dwarves, as a gift from one who has nothing, and as a memorial of Húrin Dorlomin. For now my fate is fulfilled, and the purpose of Morgoth achieved. But I am his thrall no longer. Then he turned away and passed out from the 1,000 caves, and all that saw him fell back before his face, and none sought to withstand his going, nor did any know whither he went. But it is said that Húrin would not live thereafter, being bereft of all purpose and desire, and cast himself at last into the western sea. And so ended the mightiest of the warriors of mortal men. But when Húrin was gone from Menegroth, Thingol sat long in silence, gazing upon the great treasure that lay upon his knees. And it came into his mind that it should be remade, and in it should be set the Silmaril. For as the years passed, Thingol's thought turned unceasingly to the jewel of Feanor, and became bound to it. And he liked not to let it rest even behind the doors of his inmost treasury, and he was minded now to bear it with him always, waking and sleeping. In those days the dwarves still came on their journeys into Beleriand, from their mansions in arid Linden, and passing over Gelion at Sarn Othrad, the fords of stone. They traveled the ancient road into Doriath. For their skill in the working of metal and stone was very great, and there was much need of their craft in the halls of Menegroth. But they came no longer in small parties as aforetime, but in great companies, well armed for their protection, in the perilous lands between Eros and Gelion, and they dwelt in Menegroth at such times in chambers and smithies set apart for them. At that very time, great craftsmen of Nagrod were lately come into Doriath, and the king therefore summoning them declared his desire, that if their skill were great enough, they should remake the Nauglamír, and in it set the Silmaril. Then the dwarves looked upon the work of their fathers, and they beheld with wonder the shining jewel of Feanor, and they were filled with a great lust to possess them, and carry them off to their far homes in the mountains. But they dissembled their mind, and consented to the task. Long was their labor, and Thingol went down alone to their deep smithies, and sat ever among them as they worked. In time his desire was achieved, and the greatest of the works of elves and dwarves were brought together and made one. And its beauty was very great, for now the countless jewels of the Nauglamír did reflect and cast abroad in marvelous hues the light of the Silmaril amid most. Then Thingol, being alone among them, made to take it up and clasp it about his neck. But the dwarves in that moment withheld it from him, and demanded that he yield it up to them, saying, "By what right does the Elven King lay claim to the Nauglamír that was made by our fathers for Finrod Felagund, who is dead? It has come to him but by the hand of Húrin, the man of Dolomin, who took it as a thief out of the darkness of Nargothrond." But Thingol perceived their hearts, and saw well that desiring the Silmaril, they sought but a pretext and fair cloak for their true intent. And in his wrath and pride he gave no heed to his peril, but spoke to them in scorn, saying, "How do ye of uncouth race dare to demand aught of me, Elu Thingol, Lord of Beleriand, whose life began by the waters of Quivenian, years uncounted, ere the fathers of the stunted people awoke?" And standing tall and proud among them, he bade them with shameful words, "Be gone unrequited out of Doriath." Then the lust of the dwarves was kindled to rage by the words of the king, and they rose about him, and laid hands on him, and slew him as he stood. So died in the deep places of Menegroth Elwë Singolo, king of Doriath, who alone of all the children of Ilúvatar was joined with one of the Ainur, and he who, alone of the Forsaken Elves, had seen the light of the trees of Valinor, with his last sight gazed upon the Silmaril. Then the dwarves, taking the Nauglamír, passed out of Menegroth and fled eastward toward Rhuidean. But tidings went swiftly through the forest, and few of that company came over Aros, for they were pursued to the death as they sought the eastward road. And the Nauglamír was retaken, and brought back in bitter grief to Melian the queen. Yet two there were of the slayers of Thingol who escaped from the pursuit of the eastern marches, and returned at last to their city far off in the Blue Mountains. And there at Nagrod they told somewhat of all that had befallen, saying that the dwarves were slain in Doriath by command of the Elven King, who thus would cheat them of their reward. Then great was the wrath and lamentation of the dwarves of Nagrod for the death of their kin and their great craftsmen, and they tore their beards and wailed, and long they sat, taking thought for vengeance. It is told that they asked aid from Belegost, but it was denied them, and the dwarves of Belegost sought to dissuade them from their purpose. But their counsel was unavailing, and ere long a great host came forth from Nagrod, and crossing over Gelion, marched westward through Beleriand. In summary, Húrin encounters Mime in Nargothrond and slays him. As he journeys eastward, he is taken to King Thingol. He casts the Nauglamír, necklace of dwarves, at Thingol's feet, and berates him for the loss of his wife and children. Melian attempts to reason with him, assuring them that Túrin, Morwen, and Nienor were welcomed with honor in Doriath. Due to the power of the Girdle of Melian, Húrin at last sees how Morgoth twisted the truth. He seemingly makes peace with Thingol, giving him the Nauglamír respectfully, then departs in anguish, never to be seen again. Thingol decides to set the Silmaril in the necklace and grows more and more attached to the great jewel. He gives this task to visiting dwarves who begin to lust after the Silmaril. He gives the task of setting the Silmaril in the necklace. And then when the work is completed, they demand he give them the necklace, but he refuses and speaks down to them. Enraged by his words, they slay him. As they flee, elves retake Nauglamír and return it to Melian. 2 dwarves escape back to the Blue Mountains and share their side of the story. And the dwarves of Nargothrond send a great host to Doriath. All right, so first thing that stuck out to me. So we have Morgoth releasing Húrin.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the bad stuff that happens when Húrin is released? Because, Morgoth has bad ideas in mind that Húrin is going to accomplish. In the last week's reading, on page 228, we have the first evil of the freedom of Húrin, which is
he unwittingly gives away the location.
Yeah, he gives away the location. Do we know the second thing, or is the second thing simply that this necklace is recovered, and this necklace and the Silmaril are the beginning of the downfall of Doriath?
I think maybe even before that would be in his quest for vengeance, slaying the dwarf. Meme.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like one step on that same path, though, of recovering this necklace. And
we were just saying, like, what about the Silmarils? Like, with Túrin Turambar's story, I don't even think we mentioned them once. And then now we get this moment where the Silmaril is mentioned again, and it creates this rift between elves and dwarves. And I'm wondering if this is before this, were the elves and dwarves okay on each other? They kind of didn't understand or didn't really like the other. But is this what caused the rift that we see with Legolas and Gimli now?
different accounts of it, because there's like Meme is part of the petty dwarves, remember, and it says that they had gripes with the elves because they were hunted by them and things like that.
Right.
But these dwarves, I think, were kind of at least trade partners, and they mutually benefited from just the flourishing of their cities and the trade and everything. So they were mostly, allied and I think they fought together. There's that, remember the dwarves go and battle the dragon, which was pretty cool.
Right. So it seems to me that the Silmarils being the crux of the story, I just want to dwell on that for a second, because in the beginning of the book, Silmarils are created to kind of harbor the light of the trees that were destroyed. Mm-hmm. And the Silmarils lead to elves and the Valar having this rift between them. Mm-hmm. And elves within elves too, just factioning happening. But now we have dwarves and elves having this faction between them. Mm-hmm. I find that really interesting that the Silmarils cause this division.
Yeah, but I think your original question was about the
elves and the dwarves.
The effects of Morgoth's releasing of Húrin, mm-hmm. which I think is directed towards Thingol and Melian primarily. Mm. And we kind of see that, in the beginning when he's released, before he's released, in all ways, Morgoth sought most to cast an evil light on those things that Thingol and Melian had done, mm-hmm. but he hated them and feared them. Mm. And then when the what's it called? Nauglamír is uncovered, you have Húrin kind of throwing it at the feet of Thingol, and then like accusing him of a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. But then Melian, who's Ainur and like of the same kind of level of Morgoth, is she same, or is she under Morgoth?
She's a Maya.
She's under Morgoth.
He's Valar.
He's Valar.
Yeah, so he's high up. But you have her power of just simply like being able to undo all of those lies, the things that were mingled with the lies that were mingled with truth, and everything that was good, that was hidden or distorted, is now kind of undone in Húrin's mind, and he can see it for what it is.
Right.
And then he humbly gives away there. So I think that's the end of Morgoth's sort of plan to release him and do all this evil. And then it's picking back up the power that the Silmarils tend to have on
because
people.
You're saying Melian's girdle kind of thwarted Morgoth's lies and plan.
Yeah, her girdle, or just her eyes, like, because he looks into her eyes.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it like sort of converts him in a way. Yeah. He's able to see the truth after that. Maybe the girdle is how she's able to have that power, and Morgoth's not able to kind of have his power over him anymore. But I'm seeing in this, like, at that end, and then now we're back into what the Silmarils are, and we're seeing again its effects. That I'm going to compare it to the ring.
Here we go. I knew it was
compare
coming.
it back to the ring. Because I mean, like, you have Thingol's thought turning unceasingly to the jewel of Feanor, right? And that is, it's not that the ring and the Silmarils are connected physically, but their metaphysical effects on people and things are very similar. Like, it's a lure of power and an obsession with what they can possibly bring to individuals in this story. Yeah. You see it in Thingol, you see it in the dwarves, you see it in the elves, and now it's like, it's back to Bilbo's like, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I keep?
All right, Greg, what's your counter rebuttal?
No, I agree with that. I actually agree with that. But I think it's like the Silmarils capture that threefold temptation, or that is mentioned in 1 John 2, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. It's like all contained in there in a certain way. Like, but to go back to your question, Cameron, originally, I think that Húrin's release was more like, if you, let's say I had like enslaved this dog, this strong dog.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And because he's a mighty warrior, right? So you just this powerful creature, and just mistreated it and abused it, and then I just like let it loose in your house and just let it do. I feel like that's more how Morgoth approached it. Where
I don't know, it's got to be more calculated.
But he didn't really have any control. He wasn't like controlling like a puppet.
No, but there's something in between controlling like a puppet and just letting a mad dog loose. Yeah. There's a little bit of like, I know if I release Húrin, he's gonna lead me to the hidden city.
Yeah.
I also know that once he gets there, I've twisted everything that's happened to him. He might kill Thingol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe to that, but it's not calculated like he will definitely lead me. But like, I think it's more calculated like the odds of him leading me to
are basically 100%.
Yeah,
that's why in my analogy, it's like he doesn't know exactly what the dog's gonna do, but he knows it's gonna do a lot of destruction. It's just like, gonna go in there and
but it's more. I still think it's more than that. It's
so smart, a really smart dog that can.
Because think of it like this: like, you just release a really angry man into the world. It's like, okay, is he gonna just like go kill a person? Like, that's not really Morgoth's design. Morgoth's design is more calculated.
I think he's more
geopolitical.
Chaotic. I think he's more chaotic. I think there's a calculated chaos.
No, it's in the same way that he sows whispers in Valinor,
a box of matches
for a purpose, and he's very patient.
If I get a box of matches and keep flicking enough of them and lighting matches that I'm flicking, something's gonna catch, and it's gonna. He's more like that.
He has, with the capture of Húrin, he's been working him for 28 years. This isn't just a dog that. This isn't just a lighting matches and throwing them around. This is, I've broke Húrin, this valiant man, and I'm gonna send him for a purpose. And it's not random that Húrin leads him to the hidden city.
It might lean a little bit more in that direction, but it's not like he's a sleeper agent or something that's he's like
Yeah.
giving him this
when
code
the
word
Silmarillion says their wills are constantly bent towards their master, there is a little bit of like purpose and direction in that.
And even being a thrall, just to come to your side a little bit, being a thrall is somebody who's at the will of.
They don't have complete possession of their wills, and they're not free.
Right.
But they're not marionettes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're not like his puppets going into the world. It's calculated, but it's calculated. I think it's calculated chaos. He knows that it's gonna end in like I'm gonna release him, and all of this stuff will probably happen. I don't know how, because you get that sense. I can't find where it is, but when he now knows where Thingol is located, you get a sense that Morgoth gets excited about it. He's like, yes, my plan is working, but it's almost as if it might not have worked. Like, maybe he would have killed himself beforehand in his despair, and then maybe Morgoth would have smiled at that. Like, haha, he killed himself. So I don't know if it's like super calculated. I think
the question is, how intelligent is Morgoth? And I think sometimes we think of him as like a general, like a super general. Yeah. He's just strong and evil, but he can see everything. That's basically everything in the land that's going on. He gives the sight to Húrin. He can see pretty much everything that's happening.
Like, what's his chess rating here?
It's like $4,000. It's like 4,000. He's like a super GM. I think the Valar and Morgoth are playing 3D chess, and everyone else is playing chess. And what they do is really calculated and far-seeing. And we're not giving Morgoth enough credit if we're not saying that...
He's big picture. No, I think we're all saying he's big picture. I think we're just trying to make sure you're not saying that, like, people are losing their autonomy.
No, I'm not saying that. Yeah. It's kind of like this. In your analogy with the dog, it's like, if you know they are making steak for dinner, it's like, eventually that dog's going to lead you to that steak, or it's going to eventually ruin the dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not that the dog...
It is more directed than just like, it's going to tear up your couch. Like, there's more.
Exactly.
There's something more directed than that. Yeah.
Okay,
I agree with that. I think we just spent 10 minutes arguing about something that we actually agree
I love it. What I do disagree about is the Silmarils, again, being...
How? Okay.
Because...
I agree. I'm with you on this one, Cameron.
Because the Silmarils contain a great good. The Valar created a great good, and the light of them is held in the Silmarils. Its intention is goodness. Mm-hmm. It would be like, if an alien artifact came to Earth and it had superpowers, it's not the artifact being bad. It's the fact that men are broken and bent. And when we see something that can give us power or glory or something, we're very inclined to use that for evil. It's like when scripture says the love of money is the root of all evil. If you know you can do this thing and you can get $1 million from it, it's like that can lead to a lot of evil. And it's not that money itself is bad or the thing itself is bad. It's that it is such a good thing. It's like on another echelon of things in this universe that it tends to lead broken men to broken ends.
We might be saying the same thing again, though.
I don't know about that. But go ahead.
I mean, what I would say is that what it sounds like you're trying to say is that because the Silmarils were made with good intent, then they do not compare to the ring in any way. That's what it sounds like.
They compare in some ways, but they're inherently good, whereas the ring is inherently turned to evil.
Yes, so we're not saying anything different. Okay. Because the ring is inherently evil. However, the thing that people desire in it isn't inherently evil. They desire power, which is not inherently evil. The thing they desire in the Silmarils is also, there's other things other than just the power. Actually, in both. Like, there's power, there's beauty, there's just the possession of it in of itself, possessing something for your own.
So how are they different, the ring and the Silmarils, in your mind?
Well, I'm saying that their effects on men are not all that different. Or elves or creatures. That's my argument. Is that the effects are very similar. Okay. And we can draw a direct comparison. That's my argument.
I'm gonna go super Catholic here, so we're going deep. I like this line. This is from page 231. This is when Melian is speaking to Húrin and trying to reason with him. And she says, where is it? For he that seeth through Morgoth's eyes, willingly or unwillingly, seeth all things crooked. I think that's really important because what's captured there is it's not the object itself or the truth of what's happening. It's the crookedness with which you're seeing it. It's like that darkness inside yourself that skews and turns everything around. And so like sin itself isn't just doing something bad. It's like not something as simple as that. It's not making a mistake mistakenly. It's at its core, it's a rejection of God himself and an abuse of the freedom that we have. And so like the original sin of Adam is desiring this thing that God has for each of us, like divinity in a sense, but without God. It's like grasping at this thing, but I don't want God and part of that. I just want that in itself. And I think that's more like what the ring captures, where it's, okay, I want this power, but not in the way that's ordered to how I actually am. It's like far beyond, and I want it without like grace or goodness. I want to pursue it for myself and be elevated to this high thing. And you may have good desires for what you want to wield that power for, like the end that you want to use it for. But I just think that it's what separates the ring and the Silmarils. The ring corrupts in that way, in a more active way, whereas the Silmaril, it kind of like magnifies whatever darkness or twistedness there is in someone's own heart that they're bringing to it when they begin to lust after it or whatever. It's like,
yeah, so another way to put it, if we were in council in the Silmarillion and we had the Silmarils, would we be scheming how to destroy them? Or would we see that ultimately, like some arguments for the ring where let's use this for good. Yeah. Let's use this for good. Can the Silmarils be used for good?
Yes, they can. And they can, because the ring was intended to give its wearer a power like none other, right? And you could rule with like great power. But the Silmarils do not do that. However, their effects on people in the possession of them tend toward a similar kind of like malice. Though your point, Greg, is very true that it is on the mode of the receiver who, but we see that time and time again with the elves, that they see it, they want to hold it, they want to keep it, they won't be happy unless they know where it is at all time. They'll carry it with them at all times. It has this sort of like obsessive quality to it.
Here's a question: does it happen with the Maya? I know it doesn't happen with the. Well, it does happen to Valar because Morgoth's a Valar. Does it tend to happen with Maya and Valar that they're turned to evil because of the Silmarils, or is it only elves and men?
Or that it can bring out their dark side? I don't know, but I think the fact that it happens to Morgoth is kind of inclusive that it could happen to those underneath him.
But this is another thing as far as like Catholic theology, like. They're more similar to the angels, who their decision is definitive. Like their decision,
the Valar
are more like that. Where I just can't imagine like Tolkien being like, oh, actually, I want them now. Like he's aligned properly towards Iluvatar's goals, and he's obedient to Manwë, so he's gonna continue on this path, even though we've never heard from him.
You're right. They represent sort of stable elements in this universe. They're not.
Yeah. Whereas men and elves can waffle on that. Maybe in some moments they're defending.
Well, there's a tiny little mini waffle with who was the one who created the dwarves? Olwe? Aule. Sorry. There's a little waffle there, a little mini waffle of I want by will. or I want your will sooner on my timeline. And I mean, with the ring, even someone like Gandalf was like, "Don't give it to me. Like, you cannot give it to me. Don't."
That's how I imagine and he's a Maya, and I think that's how the Valar and Maya would typically be. Was they know this isn't, they know what it can do if their hearts are corrupted and they begin to lust after it, and they're like powerful creatures, so they know.
Beren didn't lust after the Silmarils, right? I mean, that was his quest, was to retrieve them.
Yeah, but you could argue that Sam didn't lust after the ring.
Share the load.
So, I mean, there is obviously, it's about the mode of the receiver in both cases. However, if you did end up possessing the ring, it would convert you into a horrible being.
You can't ultimately use it.
The Silmarils would not necessarily do that without your cooperation. I think, though, with your cooperation and with your heart bent on them, you would become like a dragon.
Kind of like it's a dangerous thing. The Silmarils. It's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. Anything, like a moose is a dangerous animal. Because it's so dessert. Big. But I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of a moose. But
Greg is not afraid of moosies.
Yeah.
But anything big, right? Like dogs sometimes. I don't know why I keep talking about dogs. I'm just
you love dogs.
Yeah, what?
Love dogs.
Is there a dog really annoying you? Like in your, are you looking out the window and see?
Dogs, puppies are playful, right? And then they grow into larger and larger dogs, and they're so big that sometimes they hurt like kids and stuff. Not real. They're being playful, but they're so powerful that they don't realize that it's kind of like that. Like anything big and immense, there's an inherent danger in it because of the potential to do damage. And the Silmarils are like that, where they're just so beautiful and they burn so brightly that there is danger in them inherently, even though they are good.
If there's an ounce of greed in you, the Silmarils are gonna.
Yeah. Is there any of their creator in the Silmarils? That's the question.
Fëanor.
If there's any of Fëanor in the Silmarils, then there's going to be an inherent danger. But like the trees, they're not created by man per se, they're not created. They're not created by the created. They're there, but they. Oh gosh,
you're so British.
They're not. Then they don't. The trees do not have this effect on people, is what I'm trying to say. Or at least we didn't see that. We didn't see people lusting after the trees. I must have this in my garden, Sam.
Well, wasn't Morgoth? At least he hated them.
That's true.
Morgoth hated them. True. He wanted.
Yeah, he hated them, but he hates all things that are good. He deliberately wants to just destroy anything that's good. So the more pure and good it is, the more he wants to destroy it.
Dan, are you okay?
I'm not okay.
There.
Can we rate Thingol's death amongst all the deaths?
Yes.
This is a bad one, I think.
Wait, first we got to rate Húrin's death.
Yeah, we didn't rate Húrin.
Oh, Húrin.
Well, his supposed death, we don't know. It's not for sure.
It's not for sure,
ended the mightiest of the warriors of mortal men?
Yeah, well, ended his story, but he turned away, passed out of 1,000 caves, and all that he saw fell back from his face. And none sought to withstand his going, nor any know whither he went.
What are you reading?
If he didn't
I'm reading
die
a book
on
called
screen,
the Silmarillion.
Which page?
It's right above what you just read.
Oh. But it is said, so it's a lore.
Yeah.
It's lore, yeah.
Tolkien didn't want to.
If he didn't die on screen, we can't say definitively that
even if he did die on screen, there's always the multiverse.
No, that's the problem, because like with our modern minds, like of just the past couple of decades, now that we don't know for sure, it's like he's gonna come back in the story. Because that's what always happens when they don't die on screen.
Yeah, I hate the MCU too.
All right, Húrin's death, unfortunately it was the same death that Túrin and Nienor had.
I'm grateful though that he had an opportunity to see the truth before he died. Like that, I think that's what's so sad about Túrin. There was just like very little redemption in the end. But but Húrin at least got to see. And I think there's that little act of repentance when he's like locked eyes with Melian and he kind of recognizes, okay.
That's like Boromir to me.
More so, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It says
the spell of the.
Oh, by the way, Bauglir, I looked that up. I mean, we've heard that before, but just as a reminder.
Means Captain Planet.
No, not quite. Close though. Close though. Bauglir is the surname of Morgoth given to him, and it means the constrainer.
What a jerk.
Like a serpent.
Yeah. So this is the bottom of 231. It says, this is a key line too. I know we're super long. He read the truth of all that was done and tasted at last the fullness of woe that was measured for him by Morgoth Bauglir. And he spoke no more of what was past, but stooping, lifted up the Nauglamír from where it lay before Thingol's chair, and he gave it to him, saying, "Receive now, Lord, the necklace of the dwarves as a gift from one who has nothing, and as a memorial of Húrin of Dor-lómin." I think that is kind of this act of, okay, you're right. I see the truth. I'm going to align myself with the truth and then just go away forever.
All right, Thingol's death.
How did he die again?
Brutal. The dwarves kill him.
Wait, did you even rate Húrin's death? On a scale of 3 Silmarils.
It's a 2.
He gets 2 Silmarils for that. Good job, buddy.
All right, Thingol. Sad.
That was really sad. Yeah.
And he just...
Until next time.
Aren't you the...
Yeah, if you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 Silmarils out of 3. Follow us everywhere at Before the Fellowship. Join the discussion on Discord, which is linked in the description. And send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next week as we find out the greatest story you've never heard, The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.